Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams, and life becomes exciting with each passing day. And love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you derive just by being alive. Now here is the best part: you have a head start if you are amongst the very young at heart.
I was born on a Sunday morning, October 5th, 1908, in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. Wellsboro is a community nestled in the wilds of Pennsylvania, where the spellbinding beauty of rare orchids may be found decorating nature. It's a peaceful community of hardworking, salt-of-the-earth people, driven by grit and steel-minded determination. When I was born, Wellsboro was known for its skilled glassworkers. By 1939, when the import of Christmas ornaments from Hitler's Germany was banned, Wellsboro glassworkers worked many overtime hours to create over 40 million shiny, bright ornaments for the Christmas season. Wellsboro soon became known as the town that saved Christmas. My parents were Michael and Anna Scott Rustling Moran. When they married, my father was 24, my mother just 15. My father was a glassworker, the sixth of 9 children of a poor Irish Catholic immigrant family. He believed life's meaning is rooted in one's work. My mother was the daughter of a prominent old line family from nearby Lawrenceville. Her father was an electrical engineer, held many patents, and was a superintendent of railways in Buffalo and then Chicago. My mother was only 17 when I was born and already had my sister Margaret, Peggy. She was only 16 months old. In addition to the challenges of rearing 2 children, the first years of their marriage became complicated with unforeseen heartaches and troubles. First, Ford Rustling, my mother's father, died suddenly of congestion of the stomach. My mother was devastated. Then my father's mother, Margaret Moran, died of typhoid fever. Not long after her death, my mother was hospitalized with a severe case of scarlet fever, after which she started having fainting spells. In fact, during one spell, she fell down the stairs of our home, was knocked unconscious for nearly an hour, and Dr. Longwell had to be called to revive her. My mother had no sooner recovered from her fall than my father was hospitalized for 2 weeks with pneumonia. Shortly after he recovered, he lost his job in an economic downturn.
An article in the Wellsboro newspaper described what I felt when I lost my job. I was full of anxiety. How will I pay the pile of medical bills on my kitchen table? How will I provide food and clothing for Anna, Margaret, and Kathryn? Who will loan me money? I came from a poor family, and hopefully I can cope with poverty for a while. But Anna came from a prosperous family, and she's never needed to worry. How will she cope? How long will it be before I can find another job?
In short, unexpected heartaches and problems put crushing pressure on my parents' hopes for marital happiness. When I was about 3, Tioga County Sheriff Lyman Goodspeed proclaimed that my mother was filing for a divorce. At the time, divorce was rather uncommon, and in order to get a divorce, it had to be shown that one of the spouses was at fault. It was called betrayal of an innocent spouse. I'm not certain my father was a betrayer, but whatever the truth, my mother was given sole custody of my sister and me. As you may know, in those days when granting custody, judges followed the tender years doctrine. It held that in cases of divorce, children must remain with their mother. Fathers did not have custody rights, even if they wanted them. After the divorce, my father moved to Newark, Ohio, where he found another job. And around the same time, my mother, sister, and I moved to Elmira. Throughout my life, my sister has always been my best friend. When we were growing up, divorce was rare and somewhat taboo, so some parents told their children to shun me and my sister. I guess they feared their children might get wrong ideas hanging around with us. In Elmira, my mother met Theodore Eggert. He had a nice home at 128 Sly Street, but let me say, despite the street name, he was by no means considered to be a sly man. On the contrary, he was straightforward, hardworking, had a prosperous plumbing business, and was an active member of the Elmira Presbyterian Church. He enjoyed touring with his auto and was head of the local bowling league. Unfortunately, despite his prosperity, Eggert was a lonely widower. His first wife, Lizzie, shortly after giving birth to a baby girl named Wilda, died of pneumonia. Eggert needed help with his business, so he hired my mother as his bookkeeper. Then, after knowing her only a month or so, he asked her to marry him. Seems he felt my mother would make a wonderful wife and a good mother for Wilda. But Eggert's mother thought otherwise. She objected to her son-in-law marrying a divorced woman and insisted that she should raise her granddaughter. In fact, she was so determined that she refused to allow my mother into her home. As tensions flared between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, the words became so nasty, my mother went to an attorney and filed a $10,000 slander suit against her mother-in-law. She wanted balm for injury to her good name, fame, and credit. Of course, nothing ever came of the suit, except public embarrassment. Meanwhile, I guess my mother and stepfather felt it was better if I was thought of as the child of a prosperous German rather than a poor Irishman. So not only was I given the last name of my stepfather, but the spelling of my first name was changed. When I was 5, a delivery boy took a liking to me and would give me rides on his delivery wagon. It was fun until one day I fell off, got trampled, got cuts all over my face, and had a concussion. I recovered pretty quickly, but then my sister and I got very ill with scarlet fever. We were quarantined. It was not a very good year. About 2 years after the daughter-in-law, mother-in-law squabble, a more serious turmoil erupted in our family, with newsies shouting on the streets about my mother and stepfather.
Read about it. Read all about it. Jewels stolen at Cuca.
Read about it. Thieves steal jewels.
Read about it. Read about it. Jewel thief claims she was hypnotized.
Some months ago while in New York, I met Harry C. Owens, a mine owner, who put me under a hypnotic spell. Such was his influence, he controlled me even when I was far away from him. I could not shake it off. His hypnotic spell brought me to stealing the jewels.
Read about it. Read about it. Owen testifies.
I met Anna in New York City several times when she was auditioning as an actress. I didn't know she was married. We went out to dinner, to some theater shows, and we enjoyed each other's company. Afterward, I wrote her a letter telling her that I needed $3,500 to pay taxes related to my mining operations in Central America. I don't know why, but I guess she got the idea that if I was able to pay the taxes, we could elope. When we met in New York a third time, Anna gave me the jewels to sell to pay the taxes. She told me she inherited them from her grandmother. I was pretty naive.
Read about it. Read all about it. Alleged hypnotist innocent.
Read about it. Read about it. Bail for the male, jail for the female.
Bail for the male, jail for the female.
Read about it. Read about it. Jewel thieves are indicted.
Read about it. Read about it. Mother-in-law bails out daughter-in-law.
Read about it. Read about it. A husband from heaven.
Read about it. Read about it. Do you agree with the verdict?
After the trial, tragedy and turmoil continued in our lives. As if my stepfather did not have enough problems and heartaches, only a week after the trial ended, his 4-year-old daughter, Wilda, died suddenly of membranous croup. Then, while still in mourning, he faced the bankruptcy of his plumbing business, along with being sued for $5,000 by a man from Rochester. The man claimed he suffered a spinal injury as a result of my stepfather driving carelessly and hitting him while he was walking along Lady Hawk Lane in Fishers, New York. Meanwhile, arguments between my mother and stepfather became more intense. She wanted the limelight. He wanted the firelight. He wanted her to be a homemaker. She wanted to be an actress. He wanted her to stay in Elmira. She wanted an acting career in New York City. My mother's dream of becoming an actress brightened a bit when she got a role in The Blindness of Virtue, a play about the regrettable life of a young woman reared by a virtuous but very prudish mother, a mother with false modesty who never talked to her daughter about sex or about not so virtuous men. Sadly, as a result of her upbringing, the innocent daughter was taken advantage of by an older, not so virtuous man, and her life became miserable. The play served as a plea for sex education. My mother's performance in the play was a high point in her pursuit of an acting career.
Mrs. Eggert depicts one of the most emotional characters in the cast, giving opportunity for the full expression of her rare histrionic talent.
Perhaps it was hearing about my mother's success in The Blindness of Virtue that sparked my early desire to become an actress.
Read about it. Read all about it. Husband from heaven wants a divorce.
I am seeking a divorce because my wife has a scheming, designing, extravagant, indiscreet, immoral, and untruthful nature. She has run up enormous debts, far in excess of our income, and once during a fit of temper, she smeared red ink on her forehead so it would look like blood. She then called the police, but her attempt at deception was easily recognized. Anna has spent 2 months in New York City living with Harry Owens, a married man with 2 children.
Read about it. What's sauce for the gander is not sauce for the goose.
Read about it. Read about it. What's sauce for the gander is not sauce for the goose.
I have often said, people just can't bear being alone. They marry to be together, and they get divorced to be together with someone else. After the divorce, it didn't take long for Eggert to get together with another woman. 6 months after it was finalized, he married Maud McClure, a high school principal. But again, misfortunes followed. First, the front tire of his automobile rolled off as he was driving down a hill. He was not seriously injured, but his auto was badly damaged. Then, a fire totally destroyed the former home of his new wife. But, let me be clear, to the best of my knowledge, it wasn't set by my mother. In the meantime, my mother struggled, but she was hopeful for her children. She got dancing lessons for Peggy and me, and took us to tryouts for plays and silent films. In fact, my first theatrical appearance was as a dancer in a play entitled The Melting Pot. The play celebrated American society as a land of fair play, opportunity, and freedom, where if one lived a life of integrity, self-determination, and patriotism, one could succeed. The film breathed the spirit of Americanism. So, as a young girl, I was nurtured to believe through grit and hard work it was possible to succeed. It was a good lesson that I've tried to follow throughout my life. After The Melting Pot, I had a small part in The Americano, a silent film about an intrepid engineer who opened mines in Central America after being enticed to do so by a beautiful woman. The film seemed to reflect my mother's real-life love affair with the engineer Harry Owens. He too had mines in Central America. Douglas Fairbanks was the star of The Americano and one of Hollywood's most popular actors. Not long after the film, he married Mary Pickford, and until their divorce in 1936, they were widely regarded as Hollywood's most famous couple. When I was about 8, we moved from New York to a tenement in Chicago. Our lives waxed and waned with the impoverished uncertainties of our mother's ways. We learned to live on little. Then, one dreary, wintry day, we were awakened by a knock at our apartment door. It was a social worker. She told us our mother had to be hospitalized and could no longer care for us. So the woman helped us pack what little we had in 2 cardboard boxes and took us to an orphanage.
I worried that I would be put on an orphan train. At the time, thousands of orphans were put on trains and taken across the country, stopping at various points along the way, hoping to find parents who would adopt them. Many were adopted by kind and loving parents, but tragically, others were adopted by people who put the children into servitude. Like slaves, they were given little schooling and forced to work as cheap labor on farms or in factories.
Like the other children of the orphanage, I prayed in silence, but there was crying in my soul. I was a motherless child. There was an ugly sense of being left behind, unwanted, unattached. I felt the desperation for love, a yearning for just a hug. I wanted to be touched by someone who loved me. It was an experience hard to forget. It has followed me throughout my life. Fortunately, my sister and I were only stranded in the orphanage a few months before my father's sister came and took us to live with him. He lived on Hudson Avenue in Newark, Ohio, and again our names were changed. We were once again the children of Michael Moran, and I was nicknamed Kitty Moran. My father had married a rather fanciful woman whose maiden name was Lillian Crawford. To be honest, I never liked or got along with my stepmother, but later, with a twist of irony, I used her surname as my stage name. Some decisions in one's life are not so easily explained. My father believed it best to bury one's past, move on. He never discussed my mother. He wanted my sister and I to think of her as dead. Yesterday is yesterday. Today's today. Look to the future. Don't wallow in the pains of the past. He believed one should grin and bear one's heartaches and always look for ways to move ahead. So for my sister and me, our mother simply vanished from our lives. She became a lost mother. Obviously, losing one's mother is a very sad experience. My father worked at the Heisey Glass Company of Newark, and by observing his work, my aesthetic tastes and sensibilities were nurtured. I was intrigued by the unique shapes and designs of the glassware he created. I also remember living with him was a nice pause from the hectic, ever-changing world I had been experiencing. It brought some order to my life. I could feel some connections, a bonding. Not having to move from one city apartment to another, then one school to another, I discovered what it meant to find friends. In fact, later in life, after I gained some success, I enjoyed returning to Newark to visit my childhood friends. When I was a teenager, I went to see a popular play at the time that may have influenced my views on marriage. The play was about an Irish working-class family by the name of Moran, in which there were two daughters. In the play, the father's name was the same as my father, Michael Moran, and the younger of the two sisters, like me, was Kitty. The older sister felt when looking for someone to marry, one should be guided by feelings of love, regardless of money. She placed love, a home, babies, and things immaterial as the true sources of happiness. So, following her beliefs, she married a working man and had a blissful marriage. By contrast, her younger sister, Kitty, insisted that a woman should marry a man with muscle and money. She believed money could provide one with a fairy tale life and the luxuries she felt most women craved. But, as happened in the play, Kitty's expectations proved to be elusive. She married a wealthy man, but her life became sad and lonely. Instead of being a fairy tale life, it was like that of a bird in a gilded cage. The Roaring Twenties were a time when many families went west, dreaming of opportunity. My father was a bit of a dreamer, so he decided we should move to Huntington Park, California, aptly known as the city of perfect balance. When we got there, I joined the choir of St. Stephen's Church. The director, Clara Bell Wallace, took me under her wing and taught me to sing. Friends teased that I became the warbling soprano. For a while, I thought I'd be a professional church singer, but choir singing became rather boring after I experienced dancing and singing with a local stock theater production of Tiptoes. It was more fun than the St. Stephen's Church Choir. Despite the lesson of which one shall I marry, at the age of 15, I was young and foolish and wanted freedom from my stepmother. So I married Max Rogers, a UCLA college student with money and muscle, who had also been my sister's fiancé. By marrying him, I thought my dream of a luxury life was going to be realized. But as everyone knows, life doesn't always follow the path of expectations. Only a few months after our marriage, I was seriously injured in an auto accident and laid up for 6 months. As you might expect, life became rather difficult. I had a lot of frustration, as did Max, and we began to argue about issues that really didn't matter. Our marriage steadily went from sweet to sour. Max didn't trust me, and I didn't trust him. For me, it was as if I was living the script, from which one shall I marry? So after only 2 years, Max and I ended our flat tire marriage with an annulment. Later, Harry Brundage, a reporter for the St. Louis Star and Times, reported I eloped with my sister's sweetheart, stole her fiancé. In other words, I was guilty of love theft. I'd say I saved my sister from an unhappy marriage. In any case, my sister has always remained my best friend. On a positive note, While I was married to Max, I did have an opportunity to finish high school and continue to do theatrical performances at local events. Then I caught the eye of Wilbur Cushman and his Orange Grove Review Musical Comedy Company, and had the uplifting joy of the theater reviews boosting my ego.
Miss Moran is the proud possessor of a marvelous voice, and when it comes to dancing, she's the candy.
Kitty Moran is the new prima donna. She turns loose the crowd. You are very likely to say that Kitty Moran is the best you've heard in a month of Sundays.
The men say Kitty is easy on the eyes and turns the audience loose.
The reviews drew the attention of Lillian Albertson, a well-known Hollywood actress and director. She took me under her wing and advised me to change my name to Kathryn Crawford. I'm not sure exactly why, but she may have figured I'd get better publicity if people sometimes confused me with Joan Crawford, the iconic flapper of the 20s. Or perhaps she didn't want the public to associate me with another well-known Moran of the era, the gangster, Bugs Moran. Or maybe she thought I should have the same name as a popular racehorse at the time, Kitty Moran. Incidentally, I always loved racehorses, later owned one, and still get a thrill at the races. When I was 17, there was a popular song entitled 5'2", Eyes of Blue. And coincidentally, since I was 5'2" and my eyes were blue, some of my friends joked it was about me. And maybe it was.
5'2", eyes of blue, but oh, what those 5 foot could do. Has anybody seen my girl? Turned up nose, turned down hose, flat for yes sir, one of those. Has anybody seen my girl? Now if you run into a 5'2", covered with fur, diamond rings and all those things, bet your life it isn't her. But could she love, could she woo, could she coo? Has anybody seen my girl?
In March of 1926, I got very ill with blood poisoning from an infected tooth and ended up being hospitalized for 3 weeks. Needless to say, I was very upset. But then my luck changed. Lillian Albertson cast me as the leading lady in her production of Hit the Deck. I played the role of a girl looking for the love of a sailor, and Edwin Schallert, a well-known drama critic for the LA Times, gave me a flattering review.
At 19, Kathryn Crawford, the leading lady, has a rare sincerity in playing her role. She's in many respects the best music show lead we've had in Los Angeles in a long, long time. Her number, Lulu, held up the performance several minutes owing to the applause. Her effort was so capital that she can be rated a pleaser plus.
In 1928, I met Wesley Ruggles. I was unafraid, eager for opportunity, and filled with the feelings of young love. Wesley could have been my father. I was 20, while he was a 40-year-old aspiring director of low-budget movies. Wesley had rugged charm, but sometimes had the soul of a squirrel. The Hollywood press sprinkled lots of gossip about me and Wesley during the time we spent together at his Malibu beach cottage. One reporter suggested I was his squeezer, only because I wanted to advance my career. She hinted I was offering love for sale. Another reporter flashed a story that I was his golden girl, his Sheba, and we were planning a wedding, while still another claimed we were secretly married and planning to have a child. Well, for the record, for about 2 years, I was absolutely blind to other men, but Wesley and I never married. In fact, we split up just before Wesley's film Cimarron won an Oscar as the Best Picture of 1931. But I can't say whether or not I was the inspiration for his success. With regard to Wesley, I should acknowledge that he helped me get a contract with Universal Pictures, along with several publicity stories. My first Universal film, King of the Rodeo, was one of Hollywood's last silent comedy films. In it, Hoot Gibson plays the role of a son who rebels against his father. The father wanted him to be a rancher, while Hoot wanted the excitement of being a cowboy in a Chicago rodeo. At the rodeo, I met Hoot and enticed him with warm charm. He became a rodeo champion. And in the end, we won each other's hearts. "1929 was the year of America's great stock market crash. Poverty became widespread. But for me, it was a very good year. I enjoyed prosperity. Universal Pictures signed me for 5 films, and I was reunited with my mother. In my first talkie, I co-starred with Glenn Tryon, a popular comedian and staunch advocate for clean comedy. Glenn often said, "It's not necessary to be smutty to be funny." The Kid's Clever was about a small-town, topsy-turvy inventor named Bugs. Bugs was frustrated, trying to find funding to manufacture his invention, a vehicle that did not require gas fuel and was both land-going and ocean-going. Then he met me, the daughter of a wealthy banker. Bugs fell for me and I for him, and I convinced my father to fund Bugs' crazy invention. It was a happy ending. In Modern Love, I played the role of a young woman married to a man about 15 years older. The film highlighted disturbing questions about the traditional roles of a wife in American society. Is fulfilling the expectations of a husband the primary role of a wife? Should a husband be expected to do some of the cooking and cleaning? Upon marriage, must a wife quit her job and give up a career she enjoys? If she keeps a job, should a wife be allowed to live apart from her husband? Should a wife strive to be financially independent from her husband? For traditionalists, Modern Love was thought to be a rather smutty comedy. In fact, some people wanted the film censored because they believed it sent the wrong messages to women. As Ben Robinson, a film critic for the Miami Herald, put it,
Miss Crawford was bound sooner or later to find herself in the tentacles of some squawky octopus, and it proved to be Universal Pictures, the producers of Modern Love.
I'm not sure what people in my hometown of Wellsboro, Pennsylvania thought about Modern Love, but it's likely the film raised some eyebrows. In The Climax, I portrayed a young Italian girl stirring romance and passions as she strived to become an opera singer. The climax of the film came as I sang Song of the Soul. Every soul hath its song, its melody divine, rising to ecstasy, and so hath mine. Needless to say, I was surprised when I learned the film was the subject of a Vesper service at the First Congregational Church of San Bernardino. But I never found out what the minister thought about it. Signor Americano was released as both a silent and a talkie, because in 1929, some theaters still didn't have projectors to show talkies. The film was a romantic story about a dashing young officer of the American cavalry who falls in love with me, the daughter of a wealthy aristocrat of old Spain. The film was an attempt by Universal Pictures to establish me as the girl of all nations. I was an American in Modern Love, an Italian in The Climax, and a Spaniard in Signor Americano. Red Hot Rhythm was my fifth film in 1929. It told of the troubles of a shady songwriter who fell in love with a singer at a place called the Frivolity Club. I was the singer, and by virtue of my faithful love, the shady songwriter changed his ways and wrote 5 songs for me to sing. The high point of the film was when 50 girls erected a big house in 2 minutes while I sang my idea of heaven. An interesting tidbit about Red Hot Rhythm is that the Vogue ladies' lingerie store of Jackson, Mississippi showed it as a promotional, but I'm not sure how much more lingerie they sold. At 21, I was enjoying success on the big screen, but I still felt the pain, the torments, the restless heart of being a motherless child. So I placed notices in newspapers across the country. As it happened, an old friend of my mother read the Elmira Star-Gazette story, contacted my mother, and 2 weeks later, my wish came true. I was reunited with my mother. At the time, stories about our reunion appeared in many newspapers with many misleading claims. For example, a story written by Mamie Ober-Peak, a popular Hollywood reporter, greatly exaggerated the length of our separation, claiming it was a 40 rather than a 12-year separation. I suppose some editors thought exaggeration would help sell more newspapers. It should also be noted that most of the stories were based upon interviews with my mother. Reporters never contacted my father and had only limited interviews with my sister and me.
I lived in agony for 12 long years, wondering what became of my precious children. Night after night I walked the floor, unable to sleep, constantly worrying about them, knowing only that their father had stolen them from me. Secretly, he took them away because he believed by having them he could avoid being drafted for World War I. When he stole them, I was very seriously ill, for a time comatose, hospitalized for 2 long months, unable to see my children. When I was finally released from the hospital, went to my apartment, all I found were my children's tiny shoes. And not only were my children stolen, but the woman I put in charge of them betrayed me and stole what little else I had. I was left with a huge hospital bill and poverty. I sought the help of a friend, the mayor of New York, but even he, with all of his power and connections, could not help me find my children. Devastated, I moved to Boston, where I had struggled doing odd jobs and worked at the Hilton Hotel in housekeeping. Then I received a call telling me about my lost daughters. Needless to say, it was a dream come true. My oldest daughter, Peggy, came to Boston and brought me to Hollywood, where I now live with her and Kitty. I call her Kitty Cat. Looking into her beautiful blue eyes, I felt her warm heart. Seeing her, I felt lifted to heaven when I felt her arms about me. She is unlike many Hollywood women. She rarely uses lipstick and cosmetics, does not have to dye her soft auburn hair, and no face-stretching treatments are needed to reveal her natural beauty. She is real, authentic. Kitty Cat favors dogs more so than cats, especially Mike, her lively red Irish setter. I am a very lucky person. My daughters treat me like a queen. They buy me anything I want and more than I need.
Anna is the mother of my children, so I hesitate to criticize her. I do not want to upset my daughters, but the sad, tender tales she tells to gullible reporters for dramatic stories stretch the truth. Anna remembers what she wants to remember and forgets the rest. She's easily trapped by her desires and ambitions. I did not steal my children to avoid being drafted for the war. On the contrary, I dutifully served with honor. I'd also say I saved my children from a pitiful life. I saved them from a mother I realized long ago to be suffering from impulsive insanity, or what some people call brainstorm. She's goofy crazy for who knows why. In her interviews, Anna does not tell reporters of her loose lifestyle, of mania, of dope use, and her bouts of depression. She does not tell about her life in Elmira as Mrs. Eggert, nor of her life in Boston as Anna Rustling, where she became known as the mystery woman with a peaches and cream complexion who impulsively ripped up books of an employer and stole diamonds. She does not tell of her rocky relationship and divorce from her third husband, Herbert Young, a Boston area political figure. In time, I'm sure another version of Anna will be revealed. I can only hope the reunion ends well for my daughters.
After just a short time with my mother, I began to realize my great expectations might be more elusive than I anticipated. In March of 1930, troubles began when my mother was arrested for forging a narcotics prescription. She claimed she suffered from a very painful spinal injury from accidentally falling down the stairs in my home. Her doctor prescribed a narcotic to relieve the pain, and unfortunately, she became addicted. She convinced me that she was determined to overcome her addiction, so feeling very badly for her, I hired an attorney and bailed her out of jail. The charges were dropped, she was put on probation, and as treatment, she underwent saline injections. Like all people who have a dear one afflicted with addiction, I could only hope. As my mother struggled, I struggled too. Not only in dealing with her situation, but also with the intense and incessant demands of being an actress. In 1930, at the age of 22, I was in 4 more films along with a Broadway play. In The Hideout, the tough son of an underworld racketeer and rum runner goes to college to hide out from the shadow of prison walls about to surround him. While on campus, he falls in love with an ideal girl and changes his ways. I played the role of the ideal girl and expressed the joy of our love with the song Just You and I. Into my skies of blue, just you and I together, wandering on, singing our love divine. It's always a joy to sing wishful words of happiness. The King of Jazz was released when many Americans were experiencing poverty, but surprisingly, it was billed as Hollywood's most extravagant and expensive production of all time. The film featured Paul Whiteman's orchestra, George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, and marked the beginning of the crooner Bing Crosby's long career. Though my role in the film was minor, I was grateful just to be part of it. It was a fantastic film.
Here's my assignment, boss.
Say, where have you been all day? This story's half an hour old.
What's the matter?
Matter? If we women are going to run this paper, I want speed. And as long as I'm city editor, I've got to have news hot off the griddle. Here you are. 40-story building burnt to the ground. When did it happen? 10 minutes ago. That's better. Big bank robbery. 3 policemen shot. When did it happen? 5 minutes ago. That's more like it. Woman shoots husband. When did it happen? Wait a minute. Listen. That's rape.
Mountain Justice was a Kentucky hillbilly story about a young man named Ken McTavish who was seeking to avenge the murder of his father, Sandy. Sandy had been killed in an ambush after a hillbilly feud occurred between the McTavishes and the Harlans. I played the role of a young Harland girl named Coral. In his pursuit of the murderer, Ken got into an awful fight, and I intervened on his behalf. Moreover, even though I was a Harland, I was able to bewitch him with my charm and won his heart. And in a happy ending, I became his bride. Despite a hillbilly feud, love prevailed. A McTavish boy married a Harlan girl in the hills of Kentucky. Safety in Numbers was billed as a risque romantic comedy. It told of a dashing yet innocent young man who was soon to inherit $350 million. Fearing he would squander it, his uncle paid 3 New York City chorus girls to help him learn the ways of the world. The young man was portrayed by Buddy Rogers, and I was one of the chorus girls. In the film, Buddy sort of loved all 3 of us, but ultimately he fell for me. Together we sang several songs, which expressed my feelings for a soon-to-be wealthy man as I struggled trying to decide if he was the one I should marry.
Now that I'm loving, I'm living at last. My future's all love is my game. To play a man, I'd like to challenge you some summer day, young man. My heart, my handicap, it keeps me unfolded.
In the end, after much drama, I followed my heart, and we were happily married. At the time, Buddy was billed as America's boyfriend, while Mary Pickford was billed as America's sweetheart. Later, Mary divorced Douglas Fairbanks and married Buddy. Buddy, Mary, and I remained close friends for over 40 years. On December 8, 1930, The New Yorkers, written by Cole Porter, opened on Broadway. The musical satirized New Yorkers of all kinds, high society matrons, bootleggers, thieves, and prostitutes. Jimmy Durante was among the highlighted cast of stars. When he was razzed about the size of his nose, he turned it into a plus. As he put it, all of us have schnozzles, if not in our faces, then in our character, minds, or habits. When we admit our schnozzles instead of defending them, we might begin to laugh, and the world laughs with us. In The New Yorkers, I played the role of a prostitute, one who gives for what she can get. In my role, I was the first to sing Porter's very popular song, Love for Sale. But unfortunately, the song sparked a loud public outcry because it appeared to celebrate women of the evening. In fact, Even the Irish gangster Bugsy Moran railed about its immorality. Many radio stations refused to air the song because they feared the public's wrath. But they changed their tune after the baseball legend Babe Ruth told reporters Love for Sale was his favorite song. When disc jockeys started spinning it more, the song rose quickly up the music charts. Guess one could say it became not only a hit song, but a Babe Ruth home run song. Cole Porter later remarked that the song meant more to him than any other song he had written, especially Ella Fitzgerald's rendition.
When the only sound in the empty street is the heavy tread of the heavy feet that belongs to a lonesome cart, I open shop. When the moon so long has been gazing down on the wayward ways of the wayward town, that her smile becomes a smirk, I go to work. Love for sale, appetizing young love for sale, love that's fresh and still unspoiled, love that's only slightly soiled, love for sale. Who will buy? Who would like to sample my supply? Who's prepared to pay the price for a trip to paradise? Love for sale. Let the poets pipe of love in their childish way. I know every type of love better far than they. If you want the thrill of love, I've been through the mill of love. Oh, love, new love, every love but true love, love for sale, appetizing young love for sale. If you want to buy my wares, follow me and climb the stairs. Love for sale.
I only performed in the New Yorkers for about the first 6 weeks because, along with public complaints about the song, there was an outcry about a white girl playing the role of a prostitute. So, faced with public pressure, the producers replaced me with Elizabeth Welch, and I went back to Hollywood. Obviously, I was disappointed, but it silenced the critics. Back in Hollywood, I took a role with Hoot Gibson in The Concentration Kid, a movie about the growing influence of radio on human behavior. It told of an heroic rustler-catching cowboy who listened to a radio songbird named Betty Lou. As Hoot listened to her sing on the radio, he became obsessed with her. I played the role of Betty Lou, and after singing "I Want My Man of the Golden West" 3 times over the airwaves, Hoot's heart throbbed for me. Then we met and fell in love. It was the case of a song on the radio sparking a beautiful romance. Unfortunately, despite the warm feelings I experienced as Betty Lou, my real life was becoming less than what I wanted it to be. In February 1931, my mother was again arrested, and I learned that her demon drug addiction didn't start in 1929 after a fall in my home. Instead, she was hooked on narcotics long before our reunion. In fact, in 1924, she'd been arrested in Philadelphia for falsifying a narcotics prescription. Regrettably, my mother was then found guilty and sent to prison. Peggy and I hoped our mother could somehow escape her demons, but she never did. After prison, she ended up in an asylum and faded from our lives almost as quickly as she had reappeared. For a time, I felt soaked with sadness, but maybe my father knew her best. What I once felt to be love for her eventually turned to pity. With my mind whirling, I thought of giving up acting to become a dressmaker. But then, good fortune came my way. Hedda Hopper, an actress and a notable Hollywood columnist, took me under her wing. When I needed it most, she mothered me. And since she was about 25 years older and well aware of the ups and downs of Hollywood life, I trusted her advice. I suddenly felt the determination of my Iberian father. I said to myself, I'm an Irish woman, and I will not be beaten. So I checked myself into a hospital for 2 weeks, ate only vegetables and fruit, drank orange juice, avoided meat and cream, and lost 15 pounds. Upon leaving the hospital, I looked and felt better. My life got better, and I landed a role in Flying High, a musical with some of the craziest of big screen frolics.
We'll wake up on and the full moon to bed will dance until the dawn.
Flying High was such a success, I got a 7-year contract with Paramount. In the summer of 1931, I needed a vacation, so I went to Waikiki. When I returned, I began dating Danny Danker. For a while, I was the head woman in Danny's life, but after a few months, our romance became rocky, and we were just sort of holding hands. But it wasn't all bad. Danny was a successful advertising executive and encouraged me to do modeling. In fact, while doing so, I often enjoyed listening to Hoagy Carmichael's song, Stardust, perhaps the most popular song of the 30s. Its slow, sentimental style seemed to capture one's longing desire for a lost love.
Sometimes I wonder why I spend the lonely night dreaming of a song. The melody haunts my reverie, and I am once again with you when our love was new, and each kiss an inspiration. Oh, but that was long ago. Now my consolation is in the stardust of a song beside a garden wall when stars are bright. You are in my arms, the nightingale tells his fairy tale of paradise where roses grew. Though I dream in vain, in my heart it will remain, my stardust melody, the memory of love's refrain. I dream in vain, in my heart it will remain, my stardust melody, the memory of love's refrain.
Besides modeling, Danny also set me up to do endorsements and promotions for a wide variety of products. For a while, I also modeled hats.
The way you wear your hat.
About the same time I was doing the hat promotions, I also began offering beauty tips. One was very simple. Take half the white of an egg and apply it smoothly to the face. Leave it on until it dries thoroughly. Then wash it off with cold water. This will remove facial impurities and leave your skin soft and smooth.
Kathryn Crawford was a naturalist. She preferred less makeup and less penciling and plucking of eyebrows.
On another note, one of my longtime hobbies has been collecting queer old perfume bottles. Maybe my father's creations as a glassworker had something to do with it. During the fall of 1931, I dated Randolph Scott. At the time, he was a new Hollywood screen sensation. Randolph was quite muscular, about a foot taller and 10 years older than I was. We dated and dreamed together, but it was only a short time before we broke up. Then, not long after, Randolph married a very wealthy woman, Marion DuPont, an heiress of the vast DuPont wealth. I guess it's fair to say some women look for a sugar daddy and some men look for a sugar mommy. By the early 30s, musical comedies were losing popularity. Hollywood executives preferred blondes over brunettes, and I regained weight. As a result, it became ever more difficult getting roles. For the popular film Emma, I landed a minor, very limited role as a shrewish wife. But it was certainly a pleasure working with the film's star, Marie Dressler. Marie was different than Greta Garbo, another well-known Hollywood star of the era. At one point, Garbo's dressing room and mine were across from one another. People scarcely ever saw Garbo in real life. They only knew what the camera captured. After Emma, I was told I'd have a role with Jimmy Durante in The Wet Parade, but lost it to Myrna Loy. Then, in June of '32, Paramount publicly announced I would have a role with Jimmy in The Phantom President, but then I lost it to Claudette Colbert. Losing both roles was upsetting. In the fall of '32, I landed a minor role in New Morals for Old, a film about how the rules of life change more than they stay the same. In my case, the high point of acting in the film was simply a good laugh.
Don't mention work, it makes me sick to my stomach. You have a private bath. Lucky devil. I have to walk down 5 flights and then stand in line.
Yeah, when you do get in, the tub's got more rings than a pawnbroker's widow. Well, drop in any time and have a bath on me.
Just a specimen of nice, clean American manhood.
As a Hollywood actor or actress, sometimes you ride for a time on the peaks, then sink. Sometimes you work hard for years without a break, then suddenly have one. But often you just sit and wait, feeling chilled indifference. So when I felt the chill, feeling that I was slipping back into just small bit parts or none at all, I decided to refresh myself. I left films and went back to the footlights. Touring from city to city across the country, doing live performances of Irene with a cast of 50 was truly invigorating. I enjoyed my role as Irene, a poor little Irish girl with a lot of grit who dreamed of becoming a dress designer. As Irene, I met an wealthy heir who lived in a mansion, and he gave me money to support my dream. As time passed, the two of us fell in and out of love again and again as we dealt with the complications of a poor girl relating to a rich man. We struggled with the heartaches of trying to understand one another. But in the end, we sang songs together and love prevailed. or feelings expressed by Al Jolson's popular song, You Made Me Love You. I didn't want to do it.
You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. You made me want you. And all the time you knew it. I guess you always knew it.
Kathryn Crawford as Irene is enough to draw all the collegians to the bald head rose. She has a sweet voice and an even sweeter smile.
One night after a performance of Irene in Detroit, Jamie Edgar came to see me. Jamie was the wealthy heir of a Detroit family sugar fortune. Upon meeting him, I was like Irene, a spunky little 25-year-old Irish girl attracted and captivated by a wealthy man who was 10 years older than I was. In fact, I became quite enamored of him. Feeling revived, I returned to Hollywood and co-starred with Ray Walker in Skyway, a romantic comedy in which Ray was a cocky young pilot who repeatedly got into fisticuffs. Like many women in real life, I played the role of a woman who believed she could change Ray from a jerk into a gentleman. In the film, I was able to change Ray into a gentleman, but of course, what so easily happens in a film does not always so easily happen in real life. A lot of women have learned that lesson. In October of 1933, I fell from a windowsill, broke my leg, and had a serious neck injury. Some gossipy reporters suggested I was drinking excessively, while others hinted I may have attempted suicide. The truth is, a few days earlier, I had suffered sunstroke and was experiencing fainting spells. I felt such a spell coming on while visiting a friend, so I went to her open window for some fresh air, got dizzy, lost my balance, and slipped off her windowsill. I was in the hospital for about a week recovering, and during that time, Jamie Edgar made frequent bedside visits. Needless to say, I was drawn to him by his warm words and his showering of attention. I guess that's what prompted me to accept his marriage proposal. With humor, some of my friends noted that my planned marriage coincided with the release of Plain Nuts, a film starring Ted Healy and the Three Stooges, in which I had a major role as the lead singer. The film was a humorous celebration of Lindbergh's first non-stop solo flight across the Atlantic. Now, in hindsight, I guess I was plainly nuts to marry Jamie, but I did. I thought that unlike many of the men with whom I had relationships, Jamie could spoil me with comforts and security. In fact, friends teased that, like the Kitty Moran character in Who Shall I Marry?, I'd found a true sugar daddy. It was only later, after I married Jamie, that a friend showed me an article about him in the Des Moines Tribune. It was kind of a forewarning of my future, written just a few days before the wedding.
The older I get, the less important the commas become, especially when I report about James Edgar, the man marrying actress Kathryn Crawford. Edgar lived in Des Moines for about 6 months in 1934 to oversee his family's sugar operation. While here, he quickened the hearts of the girls around Des Moines by riding them around gruff in his Graham Page, tooting an ill-equipped bus horn he added to the car. He was usually wearing dirty, mismatched clothes and had an abrasive style. According to his housekeeper, he hot-headedly smashed glasses deliberately hung pictures crooked on his walls, and impulsively moved furniture around topsy-turvy from room to room. Seems, too, he's a spoiled rich boy suffering from telephonitis. He liked to tell of long calls he made in the middle of the night, supposedly romancing the shimmering Gilda Gray to fulfill his fantasies. Before leaving Des Moines, Edgar held a cocktail party, but out of the blue, suddenly he began yelling at his flabbergasted guests to leave.
On November 10th, 1934, I married Jamie in an elaborate wedding at Grosse Pointe, Michigan. At the time, it was one of the wealthiest places in America. I wore a beige-colored satin gown with a brown hat trimmed with a brown plume and a shoulder corsage of orchids, a beautiful remembrance of the wild orchids that decorate the wilds of Pennsylvania, where I was born. Henry Ford and his wife were among the guests at the wedding and gave us a set of silverware. Later, I helped Henry set up dancing classes. Henry Ford disliked jazz and what he called race music. Critics charged that he was anti-Semitic and racist. In the early months of our marriage, I welcomed the role of a socialite. I hosted cocktail parties, enjoyed sporting events in a box seat, and spent a lot of time being the interior decorator of our home. I had the walls painted a delicious pale green, soothing to the nerves and balm for the eyes. Jamie and I talked about having children, but I was hesitant given my experiences as a child. Anyway, in hindsight, my decision not to have children was probably a good one. In July of 1935, my longtime friend Buddy Rogers, with whom I starred in Safety in Numbers, contacted me. He was on tour with his band in Chicago, and Jeannie Lang, the prima donna of his troupe, became ill and lost her voice. So Buddy asked me to fill in for a few weeks. Needless to say, I was happy to be back in the footlights and able to help Buddy, but Jamie got quite peeved. So after I was on tour for only 2 weeks, Jamie came to Chicago and demanded that I return home. He said I wasn't being the wife he thought I should be. I felt like a bird in a gilded cage. I lived in luxury, but I was without freedom. I was like an emotional support animal. To avoid conflict, I returned home, but the situation led me to wonder about my marriage. I wanted love more than anything else in the world, but loving and belonging to a husband are not the same. The questions raised in modern love about a wife's role in a marriage began to stir my thoughts. How should I deal with a controlling husband? Must I simply fulfill my husband's expectations? In short, I felt restless. By coincidence, in the spring of 1936, I had a starring role in a Norge Appliance promotional film, The Restless Urge. It emphasized the importance of the spark plugs of your life, of having grit and resiliency. For me, it was sort of a wake-up call about my future. Then one night, Jamie and I were arguing, and in a fit of rage, he beat me so badly I had to be hospitalized for 3 weeks with bruises, cuts, and a black eye. I was a wreck, both physically and emotionally. After a few days, Jamie came to the hospital, cried, and begged me to forgive him. He lavished me with gifts to buy back my love, a $2,500 mink coat, a $700 a week allowance, and expensive vacations to New York and Miami. He promised to change his ways. At the time, I felt sorry for him and agreed to resume living with him. But I was naive and all too forgiving of his Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. The film was about a man with a split personality. As a kind man, Dr. Jekyll saved a bar singer named Ivy Pearson after she had been viciously attacked outside her boarding house. But then, The good Dr. Jekyll went back to his lab and experimented with a concoction of drugs, and as a consequence, his kind personality was transformed into Mr. Hyde. As a result, on a subsequent meeting with Ivy, he brutally murdered her. One morning, thinking about the film, while looking into a mirror, I had an alarming feeling. I saw myself as Ivy. After my fall, Jamie was like Dr. Jekyll, kind-hearted. But soon enough, he became more like Mr. Hyde, with a violent and impulsive personality. I began to ask myself, was I safe living with Jamie? Worried, I began to lose sleep. I began to rely more and more on sleeping pills, until one night I took one too many and accidentally overdosed. It was the last straw. I had to face the fact that my life was far from the fairy tale life I expected. I realized the man I thought I loved was too often an impulsive and often violent human being. So I filed for a divorce. In the film Skyway, I changed a man from a jerk into a gentleman, but not in my real life. Jamie did not deny any of my claims and quickly agreed to a settlement of $25,000 and my right to assume my former name, Kathryn Crawford. But as my friend Jane Landis observed, Jamie was inclined to be morose, sullen, and spiteful when he didn't get his own way. So, in a miserable welter of resentment and acrimony, Jamie filed a frivolous love theft lawsuit against Lewis Mallory III. In Jamie's jealous mind, Mallory, through seductive wiles, stole me, and for the alleged love theft, Jamie demanded balm of $300,000. One might say Jamie thought of me as a property loss, and my value was $300,000. Or you might say Jamie was not truly a husband, but more like a pimp who saw me as one of his girls and wanted a $300,000 payment for my services. Whatever one's opinion might be, the lawsuit was quickly a spicy story.
Hello, all you wonderful folks out there in Radioland. Love, theft, love, theft. The love theft trial in Miami is stirring up the country. Women jam the courtroom, favoring actress Kathryn Crawford, while 6 white shirt sleeve businessmen, all married, listened in the jury box. The judge in the case is male. All the attorneys are male. And the testimony is expected to be given by males, except for Kathryn Crawford. Today, Crawford's former husband, James Edgar, gave sensational evidence to convince jurors he was an innocent victim of love theft. His proof? First, a love note telegram his ex-wife sent to a playboy named Mallory. This is what she wrote. "Nothing's worthwhile without you, my dear. I love you with every fiber of my soul. Such is my love for you, Kathryn." Then Edgar's attorney presented a cigarette lighter with the initials KCM as evidence. Edgar found the lighter in Kathryn's purse. He claimed it was given to her by Mallory, and clear proof of Mallory's plan to steal and marry his wife. Instead of the initials KCE, K for Kathryn, C for Crawford, and E for Edgar, the initials were KCM. K for Kathryn, C for Crawford, and M for Mallory. Edgar's attorney also claimed he was absolutely certain that Mallory promised Edgar's wife an easy life with the $1,250,000 oil fortune he recently inherited. And then came the most explosive proof of love theft. Edgar claimed Mallory, a 22-year-old inheritance-rich playboy, also known as Nighthawk, sought women for nightly pleasure and ingratiated himself with Edgar's wife. And even worse, Edgar and hotel workers told a jury they quietly peeped through the first-floor hotel window with its shades up and witnessed with their own eyes Mrs. Edgar lovingly laying with Mallory, completely nude. The two of them fondly embraced as one in what might only be imagined. Hearing such details, the all-male jury looked stone-faced. After leaving the courthouse, Crawford's supporters appeared shaken and bewildered, anxious to hear from her side. Hello, all you curious folks out there in Radioland. The love theft trial in Miami became even more bizarre with today's testimony. The lovely brunette actress Kathryn Crawford, former wife of James Edgar, took the stand and brought more twists of elusive truth. She empathetically denied she had a romantic affair and planned to marry Mallory. She said she lived with Edgar but lost love for him, and that's why she divorced him. With a desperately sad emotion and tears, she revealed how difficult it was to love a caveman. She testified that Edgar had a habit of going 2 or 3 weeks at a time without a bath, not even changing his underwear. She told, too, of the repeated physical and emotional abuse she experienced as his wife, resulting in her hospitalization in March of 1936. She claimed Edgar came to the hospital and blamed her desire for a divorce on Mallory. She told of how her jealously stricken husband badgered her to admit a romantic involvement with Mallory, and at his behest to get him out of her room, she foolishly agreed to compose the love note sent to Mallory. She explained at the time that she was under duress and did so only because she feared Edgar's anger and recriminations if she refused to do so. She said the telegram was so bizarre she knew for certain Mallory, who barely knew her, would view it as a total joke and simply laugh about it. Then she addressed Edgar's claim about the lighter found in her purse with the initials KCM. First of all, she pointed to questions about her privacy rights as a wife. Is it a husband's right to rummage through a wife's purse and look at her belongings without her approval? Then she explained that the initials KCM on the lighter were actually an engraving mistake. The M referred to Moran, not Mallory. She asked an engraver to put KMC, the initials for Kathryn Moran Crawford, KMC on the lighter, but he mistakenly put KCM. However, instead of making a fuss about it, she decided the initials would stand for Kathryn Crawford Moran, KCM, not Kathryn Crawford Mallory. She told the jury she was proud of her maiden name, then posed the question to the jury. How could a husband who claimed to love her peep through a hotel window, watch her make love with another man, and not storm into the room? She told, too, of Edgar's gambling habit, hinting the intent of the lawsuit may be to pay off Edgar's gambling losses. In short, Mrs. Edgar emphatically denied she ever had an affair with the 22-year-old playboy Mallory. Hello, all you wonderful folks out there in Radioland. The Edgar Mallory love trial was delayed today amid claims of an attempted blackmail. Arthur Glickstein, the attorney representing Miss Crawford, revealed last night that Kathryn Crawford received a suspicious phone call just before 10 p.m. The mail caller asked, "Miss Crawford, how much is it worth to you to keep intimate details of your family out of the newspapers?" Miss Crawford replied, "I have absolutely nothing to hide." To which the blackmailer retorted, "Oh, you would remember if I called them to your attention." Later, the Miami Tribune received a strange call from a male who made defamatory claims about Miss Crawford, but without any proof. Mr. Glickstein also reported an unidentified male had been shadowing Miss Crawford for the past 3 days. Police are investigating the apparent intimidation. Listen again tomorrow for our continuing update of this dramatic trial. Two wealthy heirs squabbling about a woman, while millions of forgotten Americans face starvation amidst our country's Great Depression. Hello, all you wonderful folks out there in Radioland. Today at the love theft trial, there were more surprises. The defendant, Lewis Mallory III, took the stand in his own defense and vehemently denied Edgar's claim of love theft, saying the testimony about him was a bunch of lies. He never made a move on Kathryn Crawford. With regard to the love note telegram, he chuckled, saying it was obviously a joke. He said when he received the telegram, he was so amused by it, he showed it to his friend for laughs. Mallory also told jurors that after the lawsuit was filed, Edgar asked him for a meeting, and when they met, Edgar claimed he was only after satisfaction, not money. Mallory claimed that after Edgar's insistence, the two men aimlessly rode around New York City in a taxi for 2 hours while Edgar ranted, trying to get him to admit involvement with Kathryn. Edgar told Mallory he would drop the lawsuit if he gave him cash and added that he, Edgar, would put the money in a trust fund for Kathryn, adding a promise that upon her death, the residue would go to a church. Mallory testified that he scoffed at Edgar's proposal, telling Edgar, even if it were true, he did not have $300,000 to pay him. Yes, Mallory did inherit over $1 million less than 2 years ago, but as a result of the stock market crash and the Great Depression, he's lost nearly all of it. He only has about $136,000 left. With regard to the testimony of the peepers, Mallory claimed that on the night of the alleged peeping, he wasn't even near the hotel. And secondly, he believed Edgar probably paid the peepers to testify. Mallory's attorney noted that one of the peepers, William Holstrom, was a German and suggested that he may be a Hitler supporter. He said that Holstrom quit his job at the hotel after flashing a wad of cash and saying, "What's the use of working when you can make $200 easy money?" And finally, Mallory's attorney pointed out that Edgar was in litigation with an Estonian who sailed a yacht for him from Europe but was never paid by Edgar. Edgar did not refute Mallory's testimony, though his attorney asked the jury, "If you were caught sleeping with a married woman of an otherwise good reputation, would you tell the truth? Would you admit to love theft?" In closing the arguments, Edgar's attorney charged that Mallory was a despoiler who wrecked a happy home because he cared for nothing except the gratification of his own lust. John Murrell, Mallory's defense attorney, derided Edgar's claim, saying, "It's shakedown. James Edgar has the backbone of cotton string, and it's yellow. It's now for the jury to decide." Hello, all you wonderful folks out there in Radio Land. Let me tell you about the verdict in the love theft trial. After 6 hours of deliberation, the 6 shirt-sleeve male jurors decided. Mallory stole the love of Kathryn Crawford from James Edgar, and they awarded Edgar $35,000 for heart balm. Certainly far less than the $300,000 he sought. Hearing the verdict, John Murrell, Mallory's attorney, shouted, "This man is nothing but a glorified..." Sorry, folks, Murrell's vile words could not be spoken over the airwaves. In any case, Murrell declared the fight has just begun and has made an appeal to the Florida Supreme Court. Hello, all you wonderful folks out there in Radio Land. 6 married male jurors believed that James Mallory committed love theft, but 6 male judges of the Florida Supreme Court think otherwise. They questioned the testimony and concluded that Kathryn Crawford was such a refined woman she couldn't possibly have become so bold only 6 days after meeting Mallory. So they ordered a retrial of the love theft case.
Amid the uncertainties surrounding another trial, I was determined to resurrect my stage career. So in 1938, I toured with the cast of Cole Porter's musical You Never Know. And indeed, one never knows. Out of the blue, I got a break. Lupe Velez, the Mexican starlet of the musical, came down with a nasty case of laryngitis, and as her understudy, I was asked to fill in. Fortunately, I did all right.
In the chief feminine role of a masquerading maid, Miss Velez must be quite unusual if she can give more satisfaction than her understudy, Miss Crawford, who played with all the vivacity and piquancy one could only reasonably expect from the Mexican girl.
After my success with You Never Know, I joined an outdoor summer musical company that toured across the country. We did Jerome Kern's Showboat and the musical comedy Rio Rita. I especially enjoyed doing Rio Rita because in a 1929 movie version of the musical, Bebe Daniels was Rita, and Bebe was my very favorite Hollywood actress. I was impressed with Bebe not only for her acting, but also because she had adopted a boy who was stranded in a London orphanage. Doing the tour was certainly an enjoyable way of being away from the trial.
Hello, all you wonderful folks out there in Radio Land. While Hitler is waging war in Europe, a second love theft trial is being held in Miami. But neither Miss Crawford nor Louis Mallory are attending. Crawford is still touring the country, and Mallory is in the hospital in Boston. And incidentally, the beautiful young woman he recently married is warm at his side and 4 months pregnant. Without the presence of Crawford and Mallory, attorneys in Miami rehashed the evidence, but the case ended with a hung jury. So the case was settled at a conference of the attorneys. The case ended up like the crashing stock market. Instead of getting a bullish $300,000 payment for love theft, Edgar had to settle for a bearish $5,500. Crawford said she didn't think Edgar should have received a penny, but it was worth the money for the case to be over. He is sure the attorneys were happy with their fees. She echoed Cary Grant's observation. Divorce is an expensive game played by lawyers.
With the passage of time, my feelings for Jamie turned from love to anger to pity to trying to forgive and forget. My father would say, "Move on. Think of him as dead." So after the trial, I went to Melbourne, Australia. While there, I toured with George Dobbs during the musical comedy I Married an Angel. And as I should have expected, the Hollywood press quickly reported I left a devil and married an angel. Well, the truth is, George and I never married, but we did become very good friends. In fact, we even wrote a song we titled "You'll Find Me." I especially like the last verse. As you ride along, the wind will whisper a love song. Hum it soft and low, and you'll find me. As World War II intensified in Europe, I wanted to be home, back in America, so I returned to Hollywood. I was emotionally torn between wanting to remain an actress and wanting to quit. So to help resolve my ambivalence, I took a minor role in City of Missing Girls. In the film, I played the role of Helen Whitney, an assistant who worked for a corrupt recruiter at a supposed New York talent agency.
Would you mind taking your wrap off so I can see what you look like?
Why not? What have I got to lose? What do you think?
Come in. Oh, I didn't know you were busy, King. I only wanted to check with you about the session at the studio.
Well, the bookers are all set, if that's what you mean.
Oh, this is Miss Helen Whitney, Miss Charmaine. Now, you go with her, and she'll give you a couple of rehearsals and explain what's expected of you. Now, you two girls run along. I want to have a little talk with Dandy.
Thank you.
I really didn't enjoy my role as Helen Whitney, and critics rightfully complained the film was a fizzle. My last experience as an actress did make it easier for me to decide to quit acting and begin a new career. By 1942, like nearly all Americans, I was preoccupied with World War II. I felt a great deal of patriotism and became involved in volunteer projects and programs to support our troops. Since I lived in California, I was especially interested and strongly supported the war in the Pacific under the leadership of General Douglas MacArthur. In 1943, at the age of 35, I quit acting and became an interior decorator. Theatrical friends suggested my interest in decorating was sparked by the endless hours I spent observing set designers and makeup artists. Others felt it was an expression of an inborn natural talent. They believed my interest was inherited from my father. After all, he worked with cut glass, the jewelry of interior decorating. My astrology-minded friends looked to the stars and read horoscopes. They noted I was a Libra and believed that as a Libra, I was destined to a career in interior decorating.
For Libra, the aesthetics of a home are vital to the well-being of the human psyche. You'll enjoy a career as an interior decorator due to the endless opportunities to create entire environments from nothing but your creative ideas. You understand the roles of textures, colors, form, and function, and how they correlate to spaces within the structure of a home. Libras prefer blue and green colors.
I'll leave it to others to speculate what ultimately led me to leave acting for decorating, but whatever the reason, my career as an interior decorator has lasted nearly 40 years. It started on a small scale and steadily developed. Initially, I made custom lampshades and advised realtors about interior decorating ideas as they prepared to sell a home. Then I was involved with the Dear Decorator column for the Los Angeles Times. Readers sent questions, and I offered suggestions. For example, I recommended the use of oak for elegance, and I encouraged the use of blue and green colors. I'm sure my astrology-minded friends noted that fact. I also suggested that while preparing to decorate a new home, one should live and sleep in it while it is being constructed. By doing so, it helps one more fully understand light, shadows, and air availability when choosing colors, materials, furniture, and so on. Then a special opportunity came along. My longtime friend Buddy Rogers and his wife Mary Pickford commissioned me to be the consulting interior decorator for their home, widely known as Pickfair or Hollywood's White House, where the rich and famous, politicians and Hollywood stars gathered for lavish parties. Afterward, they also hired me as the interior decorator for their Palm Springs weekend retreat. For dramatic accent, on one of the walls of the retreat, I used swords from Rudolph Valentino's collection. I felt the swords created a nice flair. Besides consulting for Buddy and Mary, I also became a consulting decorator at the Waldorf Astoria for the apartments of former President Herbert Hoover and General Douglas MacArthur. I was honored to be their interior decorator. In 1960, my father, Michael Moran, died at the age of 76. He was a good father, a proud Hibernian, an active Catholic, and a skilled glassworker. He used to say, "Never be a prisoner of your past. It was just a lesson, not a life sentence." I always found his words important to remember. In 1965, WAIF, the World Adoption International Fund, founded by the actress Jane Russell, held its annual ball. Its goal was to raise funds to support the adoption of thousands of orphans stranded in orphanages around the world. Billed as one of the most glittering events ever staged in Hollywood, the ball was held at the spacious Hollywood Palladium. The Palladium was transformed into a beautiful royal hall, showcased with crystal chandeliers from the set of My Fair Lady. Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon came as the honored guests, and I volunteered pro bono to decorate the retiring suite for the princess, which I named the Island of Privacy. Furnishings included a polar bear rug and a green silk sofa. It was a royal night to remember, with Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon basking in the limelight of 1,600 guests. Sonny and Cher performed after a special request from the princess. For me, when they sang, I couldn't help but think of the thousands of orphans who simply wanted love, a hand to hold, to be held tight and not let go.
I got you to hold my hand. I got you to understand. I got you to walk with me. I got you to talk with me. I got you to kiss goodnight. I got you to hold tight. I got you, I won't let go. I got you to love me so.
For myself, having experienced life in an orphanage and the heartaches of a waif, the song was especially meaningful. Having one's work featured in Architectural Digest is like getting a starring role in a successful movie, and I've been fortunate to have my work included in 3 different issues. The apartment in the towers of the Waldorf Astoria is decorated to serve a variety of functions for its owner, who spends only a portion of his time in the city. The focal point of one end of the living room is a mirrored chimney breast with a white marble mantel. Centered on this is a large seating arrangement with green sofas. The guest room has a striking color combination of green and white. The walls are covered in a textured oriental paper to create backgrounds of sharp contrast to the green. The Empire-styled beds in ivory paint have green velvet fitted bedspreads. The draperies and lambrisquin are a bold green and white stripe. In 1968, Mr. and Mrs. Barron Hilton asked me to decorate their home, the Bel Air, in Beverly Hills. The dining room captures Mrs. Hilton's tastes for a table to seat the entire family, as well as her choice of cut glass and chandeliers, the jewelry of interior decorating. And one of the home's finest features is a custom pool with blue, gold, and yellow tiles that depicted the 12 signs of the zodiac. This home was remodeled on a grand scale. The interior is decorated with a mixture of styles and periods of furniture to complement the owner's tastes and lifestyle. Mellow blue tones create a dramatic candlelight mood in the dining room, and the bay window offers a dramatic view of the Sierra Madre Mountains. And the game table incorporates the owner's collection of elephant figures. The completion of my interior decorating of the home had a fairy tale ending. The last verse of You'll Find Me came true. As you ride along, the wind will whisper a love song. Hum it soft and low, and you'll find me. I guess one could say the owner, Ralph Parsons, was humming. He found me and asked me to marry him. Hearing that I was getting married excited my astrology-minded friends. They said Ralph and I were meant to be together because Ralph was born under the sign of Cancer. They said a Cancer and a Libra have very high compatibility. A Libra is attracted to a Cancer's calm presence and refrain, while a Cancer loves a Libra's inherent sense of fun. They have each other's backs in good times and bad. The wedding was a home ceremony with Reverend Thomas Yerxa of St. John's Episcopal Church officiating. My sister Peggy was my only attendant. Milton Lewis, Ralph's right-hand man at the Parsons Corporation for nearly 40 years, was his best man. Afterward, the wedding party gathered at Perino's for dinner. The owner, Alexander Perino, was known as the Dean of Los Angeles restaurateurs, the Michelangelo of the menu. Like myself, he too was once an orphan. After overcoming many setbacks, Alex enjoyed success through sheer grit and determination. Winston Churchill once said his most brilliant achievement was marrying his wife. Like Churchill, I can honestly say the most brilliant achievement in my life was my marriage to Ralph. We were both self-made, optimistic, believed in the American dream, and shared political and religious beliefs. Ralph made my heart smile. Like myself, he came from humble, unvarnished beginnings. At a young age, he worked with his father as a fisherman. During World War I, he dutifully served as a Navy volunteer serviceman and then conscientiously worked his way through college, studying engineering with little fanfare. Ralph was relatively short in stature, but tall in character. He was quiet, almost meek in manner. He didn't need footlights to be motivated. He lived the theme of the melting pot and ultimately experienced the American dream of success. He founded and led the Parsons Corporation as it became one of the largest construction and engineering companies in the world. He achieved by inspiring those around him. During World War II, his company built Liberty ships. After the war, they built 40 major airports, oil refineries, and pipelines around the world, and missile sites for NASA and the Defense Department, to name just a few of his many projects. Ralph's work reduced poverty and created a better life for millions of people around the world. Upon retirement, he placed nearly all of his accumulated wealth in a foundation to benefit the less fortunate of society. During my life, I knew the outside, but not the inside of many men. With Ralph, I felt I knew both the outside and the inside. After 4 wonderful years, perhaps the saddest moment in my life was Ralph's passing. Ralph and I loved parties, so in 1977, 3 years after his passing, I held a party in his honor at Perino's. Some people thought it strange, but I thought, why not? Why not have a gathering to celebrate and honor Ralph? Reverend Yerxa, the minister who married us, came and spoke at length about Ralph. He described him an unassuming man who surely made his mark on the world. He was not handed life on a silver platter. Milton Lewis told of Ralph's years of incredible leadership. Ralph listened, but never dithered in his decision-making. He had a knack for being able to sensibly balance his competitive spirit with cooperation. The Hiltons, Mary Pickford, and Buddy Rogers also came to the gathering. Buddy brought a special spirit to the party by bringing the sheet music of My Future Just Passed, a song we sang in the 1930 film Safety in Numbers. Naturally, it was quite nostalgic as we gathered around a piano to sing it. I felt as if Ralph and I were singing it together, especially the verse, "Now that I'm loving, I'm living at last." Recently, I was diagnosed with cancer. With precious time trickling away, I look back at the moments of my life. I have always believed in grit and following one's dreams. There are a lot of closed chapters in my book of life. I keep the pleasant memories. The others I leave behind. I believe that I am better for the difficulties and struggles I've experienced. In fact, I believe the more troubles one has in life, the more mistakes one makes, the more one suffers, the better one understands others. Experiences of trial and suffering strengthen one's soul. In my early years, I followed my mother's dream of becoming an actress. Sometimes my acting roles seemed to mirror my real life. Other times, my life seemed to mirror the plays, musicals, and films of which I was a part. In my later life, I was drawn to the allure of designing and decorating. At times, I felt my father's aesthetic sense as a glassmaker. I am grateful for my life. I cannot be certain how people will choose to remember me, but I am hopeful that I will be remembered as one who led a worthy life.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall upon at the seams, and life becomes exciting with each passing day. And love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive just by being alive. Now here is the best part, you have a head start if you are amongst the very young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive just by being alive. Now here is the best part, you have a head start if you are amongst the very young at heart.